Where I didn't have a voice, maybe in some ways in my life, the poetry was a way of giving voice to things that I was not able to express in any other way. Hi, my name is Jaclyn Piudik, and I will be reading from some of my published works tonight and some new works as well. I'd like to thank the Art Bar for giving me the opportunity to do this virtual reading. It's my first time doing a virtual reading, so bear with me. I'm going to start off reading from my recent chapbook that was published by Espresso Chapbooks. It's available online at espressochapbooks.com. This chapbook is called The Corpus Undone in the Blizzard, and it was written through a journey of cancer that I went through a couple of years ago. So I'll start off with a poem in the chapbook that's called The Sum of Exterior Angles. And I will say that I was very honored to have had this poem on the long list for the Vellum Poem of the Year Award in 2018. The Sum of Exterior Angles. 1. And supposing tragedy were erosion in the deep, low, 5, 16, 18, 23. Today she told him of the women who died behind the oak, choking on acorn haze. The women gathered in the corner wearing red, shades of damage, an ad-lib stir. So many doors, the one that opens, silence in spasm, ironic rhythms, the shiver of the lemon tart. And supposing an aside of pantomime, perhaps power de facto, head bowed over the sink in condition. 2. She left her socks on the kitchen table, right hand free to stroke the exactitude of chance, a lissom feather on the snow heap. It's the stuff of grading, when none is needed to tell the story in a single reeve, a regress, a question of lasting and how long. 3. Violation recedes into the matrices, spellbound in its stasis, craving quiet collage, symphonic solitude, reading glasses not from the dollar store, devolution to revolution, room to breathe, now or not, a day at the cinema, impaction, carry away the detriment of speech release, loquor, silence, obloquy. 4. She has to get rid of 15 pounds of body fat by Memorial Day, 30 pounds in 30 days. Algorithms and difference, a complicated conversation. 5. There's shaking in the air, and the walk wisens. We'll see the bones before long and their thickness runting in concentration. 6. Aghast with mud fever, gaslighting, titanic clench on Omega and Vox, heart space calmed homeopathically, a cowled cavity held for warmth between tremors, white exhaust. She crouches before the greaves in Friday morning sting, eye folds collapse into valance. 7. Soon she will search for the stench of magnolia, what isn't owned, unstated, bamboozle the war on spring. The next poem is called, also from the chapbook, is called Chemotherapy and the Tasmanian Devil. An elephantine drip aglow fortuitous bubblegum pop a la Bazooka Joe. Her appetite undergoes treatment for disarray in the dark archives of university and college. Joan of Arc or Jones, New York, has no place in these toxic gardens. Jab her with poetic justice, a heartfelt grunt, a rasp, and a slow-born growl of plasmataz. The curative art, sick, becomes art of the omnivorous kind. The hellishly tired veins swig their pastel cocktail, a seeming infinity of cranberry masks. The sterile byways, the benign gleam of cartoon English and wigged outness. Loony music pacifies the buzz, the nauseated floral spin in the afterworld desert. Distant from eloquent drawl, she is so radiant. Shine on, crazy diamond, omnia mutantur. Okay, the next poem I'm going to read is from my first chapbook, which is called The Tao of Loathliness. And this chapbook is a series of poems that were written through the character of Kundry, who was the loathly damsel figure in the German Parsifal, the medieval Grail romance written by Wolfram von Eschenbach. This is called In Satiety, on the legacy of Adam's daughters. And she decided not to remain a condition, lest a stranger god assume dominion. Caparisoned in traces of obsolescence, she is a violation of all that is splendorous, a euphemistic variant. Born of no rib, no head, she bears her lineage in the bloat of her hair, feral eyes, mining orchids in some half-hell by day, at night dreaming handwritten triptychs of botanical Latin or lazy with wake. Still, there are moments without ire to digest, when eating is neither a heritage of sin nor an act of war. She declaims this world an oasis then, despite the pessimists who stare and wait, afraid to see their own rapacity. For in hindsight, who can begrudge the right dare? And what is desire if not the need to unfather admonishment, the will to be midwife to sapient words? After all, she knows some things do grow in the shade. So that was Kundry. I'm going to read a couple of poems now from my first and so far my only collection, but I'm working on a second. My first collection called To Suture What Phrase. I'm going to start out with a poem called At the End of Circumference. I just have to get it open to the right page. At the end of circumference, that you are Signius, arched in disquietude, unutterably stunning and sparse, does not assure continuance. You truss your way through my thighs with illusions of lingering, imposing preciousness on paucity, edges on every viscous mouthful of time. Fluidity gives meaning to us, the lachrymose, who subsist on iodized air, feed on the curves of our own melancholia. Between the I and the you, we are nothing more than the contours of a sob, an unsynchronized ache, a subtle lack of lineation. Cheekbones poised in defiance, we challenge uncertainty, assume a position of rondure, settle into a question. The next poem I'm going to read is a poem that I wrote for Marguerite Duras, who's one of my favorite authors. And this poem is called Questionable Eyes, Brown Hair, for Marguerite Duras. What is heroic in watching a fly perish? Who is responsible for that raspy voice, the horn-rimmed glasses, the rice paddies? The body evacuates itself when necessary. I'd take her admission of promiscuity as invitation, but I am wed to a chain of eccentricities. Her city has entered my adrenals, giving off time-released doses of resistance, and the sweetest architecture, the familiar monotones of the Rue Oberkampf. The greatest icons are the bashful ones, the brooders, immortal but never free from the burden of aging. What is heroic is how long it takes to die. Oh, if I could squeeze into that body when this and others fail me. Okay, the next set of poems I'm going to read are from a new manuscript that I'm working on that is hopefully going to be my second collection. And I'm going to start off with two poems that are from a suite of poems called Songs in the Key of P. So these are two of the segments from that suite of poems. Eyes saccharine heavy, historied with shrills. You, stealing my silence, my scars. There must be breath in constraint. I whined under Venus just before you didn't dance. After 7 scotch-taped organic cigarettes, a bald bench. My hands are getting older, 90,125 words venerated, bygone love conventions, the length of 2 sentences and a chocolate bar, an unyieldy solace for Svengali juices, this swelter of heaven. Lunar discourse, doubtful as basements and birthday cake. You are contagious, dear P, an event to remember some summers ago over bodies. What stories pistachio the day? Where does pastiche become whole, engaged in filmic rhythms, Achilles and his tendencies? There is terror in my format, ancient possibility, melodrama in weeds and wisdom. Age discombobulates, vacates the rhizomes, bruising us forward. The next piece is called An Essay. Under the mask, a depraved woman. Some plausible pretext. Let's call her Octavia. Let's call her a profound secret, stuffed with stars and nuclear fallout. Scaling the edges of the sidewalk to find a mountain, a creek in the sewer. Add a suffix to her name to make her a thing worthy of study, visible, audible, etc. She dreamt that she was a drum laying in a tympanous liquid, that unidentified ingredient in the mouth of October's last trip to the treacherous sea. There are 8 ways of looking at gold before it becomes gravel, before the permafrost sludge becomes a mother, or the rose held tightly between the teeth of an every life. I'm originally from New York, so I have a number of poems that have references to New York. a lot of the poems from my first collection were actually written while I was still in New York, though I've been in Canada for a while. And this is a poem that is an elegy to Frank O'Hara, and it's called The Frankness of Winter. What strikes the spoon? Preparation for life's adjectives, interpreting avian rhetoric, 10 gull tales, ludicrous and sorry, a fresh wound or residual hedonism. Because a sweetened core is too world for me, on my Juliet balcony, wishing for the one happiness, benign envies, patina in concentric squares, a cinnamon fog. And whence, pray tell, this throb? Because I write better with a cigarette in my hand and warm concrete on my ass. Because birthdays come and go, and curiosity is a museless house in heather. Dear Frank, I'm waiting for our lunch date. Fire oranges, rants at New York kitsch. Oh, how our rubble arranges itself into a hemistick, a saintly tirade pickled in a mason jar. To hell with the mosquito and the lie that speak the same verbatim. Can you tell a shoe from the size of its foot, a man by the length of his meter? Funereal rites are never kind, or hearts rarely, still moving to remember when color could only be experienced in person. Citizenry is a fruit, to wit, 90 seeds of citrus, opal, a village near your egg cup on the low edge of our mutual island. I refuse to write about snow. The young forge their quartzes in the would-be grass, as if the grocery list were not some sort of praise or prayer or wanderlust, as if it didn't take courage to write what you feel, even when you think it wrong, to muster what you are. Thank you, Frank, for your frankness and your personism. My curls need more help curling these days. My world needs less bigness, more humanism. There are so many shapes I cannot identify or pronounce. Pas de problème, you would say. Such haughty eloquence, mirific logic, a far-reaching angel prompts the song, a soupçon of chaos in the ordinary, a tinge of imitation, a jot in what might have been, a macula in the lowdown. And look, there it is again. Voilà la neige, der Schnee. That's for the great Frank O'Hara. And the next poem is called Glossa Inordinaria and the 28th Moon. Next to the booze and the birthday cake, Umbriel delivers shape on razored wings. Panting freeze, the Pope of Gravitas scratches words into frosting with his thick-nibbed calamus. I'm hungry for the sanctum of a pretty foot, cubist blue electric toes, the angles of a sordid moon, scrubbed mute. Where do they end and we begin in a broken, uncircled? Once pupated, daughters dotted humble with possible thunder, hubris interrupted, misinterpreted, and pure. I am hungry for degrees, marginalia carved into my flesh side, unkoshered reversal in seamed stockings and sneakers. Okay. And the next poem is from my another chapbook, which is a series of translations of some of Federico Garcia Lorca's ghazals. And the title of the chapbook is Of Gazelles Unheard. And this poem is called Of a Mordant Adieu. Night practices no vengeance near your painted ear. Baroque, I will go alone as alacrity blooms at my breast. Baroque language brined with salty tears. The ache before the veneer at the foot of this going. Baroque, I will go integrating loss, the sap of an incarnation, turbulence cloaked in obscurity. Baroque, neither night will come nor ache. For you, time will die, and tomorrow's for me. Okay. I'll read next another of the poems that have reference to New York. This is a poem called Elsewhere. I've been lucky enough to live in different countries in my lifetime, and I wrote this, I think probably shortly after I came back to New York after having lived in Israel for 4 years. And the poem is called Elsewhere. Still I return to New York, while in the fortress they roast chestnuts. Onion tarts melt on red velvet banquettes, and Côte du Rhône leaks through the ramparts. Still I come back here from prayer-wailing seas where belches are sacred as olive grease and za'atar and God, where worlds are born in throats deep as wadis, bundled and sold in burlap sacks next to almonds. I thought I saw Jordan from my window when it was merely an urban mirage. Call my sunflower visions evasions, if you will, but my healer is poetry, not Prozac. Prunes stewed in Armagnac, tulips smeared on convent walls. I am centuries of cliché and saturnine flesh, an elegy for everywhere that I am not. I am the barefoot kneeler in Byzantine mosques, the spinner of soups and cast iron pots, the creeper through eons past neons that singe, the hindsight, the howling, the screeching and scratching in the cellar, in the kitchen, in the attic behind my eyes. And now I can say I still return to Toronto. I'll read another poem now from my chapbook, the most recent one. This poem is called Not to Suffer a Lack of Ink nor Time. Hers is a pseudonym. No misses, but a series of near misses, a distaste for syringes and structures that withstand earthquakes. She is a sequence of mad rituals. By the meridian of friction, she eats soup at 7 a.m., and on her way to life, a dab of peanut butter. Splish splash in sidecar utopia, the aroma of virtuous pie. She finds 7 pentacles face down under the stars, 5 guitars at the perimeter of her optic nerve, a fleur-de-lis on her second mug of coffee, and a not-so-grand piano, thirds, sans musique. Doctor, mother of kismet, survivor, she will not turn from the wind or the vertical angles of sleep. Time to dismiss the goddess of leftovers and claim her place on the tiger. And I will close with a poem that I traditionally close my readings with. It's become something of a signature piece. So if any of you have heard me read before, you've probably heard this poem before. But it's called Why She Ate Her Hair. And it was a poem that was written after seeing an image, a photograph of a woman who died, an anorexic woman who died from ingesting her own hair. Why she ate her hair. Because she lived in the house of hunger, emaciation nation, the state of starvation. Because she ran out of sky, and this could bring heaven. Because she needed definition to be angular. Because if she ate enough of herself, she might find herself. Because mortality was not enough, and surely God was hairless. Because they accused her of being full of herself, and she thought she'd prove them right. So that's it. Thank you all for tuning in and taking the time to watch this reading. And thanks again to the Art Bar for inviting me to do this reading. And if you're interested in ordering one of my recent chapbooks, you can go to espressobooks.com and you can order it from them online. Thank you again, and until next time.